Hey there friends, today's video is going to be about the city of New Orleans. Those of you not from the state of Louisiana like I am may not know this, but there is no American city more corrupt than New Orleans. It's led by complete morons, total idiots. It's a popularity contest as far as the mayor goes, so the stupidest person that is the most well known is usually who gets elected. There's somebody right now named LaToya the Destroyer is her nickname. If she could have taken New Orleans more into the dump, she's doing it. First, guys, go check out my good friends over at CMMG, cmmg.com. These guys make some of the best firearms on the market, some of the best variety of firearms on the market, different types of configurations, as well as different calibers and many different Cerakote finishes. These guys put their money where their mouth is. These guys are one of the leading companies out there who get on board routinely with Second Amendment issues, and they put their money where their mouth is. They are investing their own hard-earned money to protect our rights, and yes, they make good stuff also. Use my discount code FTATF at cmmg.com. Again, my discount code is FTATF for 10% off at cmmg.com. So you guys know how the leftists who don't want to protect our schools, actual schools where our children go, always say that they're not going to harden them with bulletproof glass, metal detectors, things that would keep killers out. They don't want to do that because they don't want our schools to look like prisons. But now the leftists are trying to make a literal jail into a prison. So we don't want them to look like prisons, but it's okay if they look like jails. Check this out.
Police are trying to come up with the game plan before the quarter turns into a tourist mecca ahead of Essence Fest on July 4th. The state's new concealed carry law goes into effect, letting people carry a gun without a permit, but the city is looking to a loophole to create a gun-free zone in the French Quarter. WDSU investigative reporter Cassie Sherm looks into how the city is turning one of its French Quarter districts into a school. Cassie.
Starting later this week, the law will allow those 18 and older to carry a concealed handgun without a permit.
I think everyone understands that guns and alcohol don't mix, they never have.
It's a move city leaders have been fighting and lost in the legislature.
The reason why we were focused on the French Quarter is because we worry that when there is a shot fired, several shots fired, because of the density of these crowds, you have the possibility for many people to get injured or killed.
And they are no longer prohibited.
And now the new law is something NOPD is having to prepare for.
NOPD officers have been in mandatory training, learning what they can and cannot do so that they don't violate any person's constitutional rights against an illegal search and seizure.
What they can enforce is negligent carry. Formerly incarcerated felons or a person with alcohol levels of a .05 will not be allowed to carry a concealed weapon. You cannot carry a weapon at a demonstration or parade or in a restaurant or a bar that serves alcohol.
We were going to figure out some kind of path to find some type of solution to protect the people of New Orleans.
With the united concern for a rise in violence in the French Quarter, a new solution to create a gun-free zone is in the works. That's where the idea came to create a school zone.
Well, the 8th district back behind me here is in the heart of the French Quarter, and that's why NOPD leaders as well as city leaders are making this building back behind me here the latest training facility for officers. What that means is this will be a school, and so those within 1,000 feet of this building will not be allowed to carry a firearm, making these areas a firearm-free zone.
Here's what that firearm-free zone would look like. This is the radius, and it includes blocks bounded by Canal and Toulouse streets and large stretches of busy Bourbon, Royal, and Charters. Those all will be off limits for guns. This comes after a violent weekend in the French Quarter where there were multiple deadly shootings.
We have seen an increase from last year, obviously.
So these city leaders feel this move is what's best for the quarter, and they're asking for those who come.
Guns and crowds don't mix. Guns and alcohol don't mix. Don't bring your gun to the French Quarter. Leave it to the fine women and men of the NOPD to protect you.
Okay, first of all, the fine men and women of the NOPD are not doing a very good job. Sorry, fine men and women of the NOPD. We don't want you to do your job. You suck at it. This is an article from New Orleans from just a couple of days ago. Headline, French Quarter residents concerned about crime infrastructure. The recent crime spree includes the killing of French Quarter tour guide Christy Thibodeau, 43, who was shot dead near Jackson Square during a botched robbery early on June 30th. This was 4 days before the new concealed carry law, where you was permitless, would go into effect. The day before Thibodeau was killed, a man was arrested and accused of hurling a brick through a window near Cafe du Monde and stabbing another man with a railroad spike. Not good enough for you? Here's a little bit more handiwork of the fine men and women of the NOPD. French Quarter homicide rate highest in years, even as cities drops. A man was shot and killed on Bourbon Street Saturday, the fourth homicide reported in the French Quarter this year. The latest data from the Metropolitan Crime Commission shows the year-to-date homicide rate in New Orleans has dropped since 2022. The French Quarter, however, appears to have seen more homicides so far in 2024 than any year since at least 2011. That includes 2022, in which New Orleans saw its highest homicide rate in decades. So the fine men and women of the NOPD right now are responsible for literally the highest historical homicide rate in the French Quarter. Not all of New Orleans. The rest of New Orleans, apparently the PD's doing kind of good. For some reason, right where they want to put the school to deter law-abiding New Orleans residents from carrying guns. In fact, if you look at the French Quarter's crime rates year to date, you will see that they fail miserably. They have an F rating for the crime rate in the French Quarter, right where they want to prohibit honest, law-abiding Americans from carrying firearms to fight off the criminals who are producing this horrible crime rate data that you see right here. Let's go all the way down to violent crime, where the national average per 100,000 people is 370. The New Orleans violent crime rate versus the national average of 370 is 1,444, with the French Quarter bringing in 578 of those. So even the French Quarter's own rating pulled from the New Orleans is still almost double what the national average would be. So we have two things at play here. Up to now, the NOPD has done a horrible job. A horrible job. It's almost as if they, even though they have a precinct right there in the middle of the French Quarter, it's like they've ignored crime in the area, just not doing it. I mean, for such a small, concentrated area, you would think, having one precinct right in that 8th Ward right there, that they would be able to police that a little bit better. On top of that, the law did not go into effect until July 4th. So they can't blame any of the carrying of firearms in that area on anything else other than criminals up to this point. Now, quick side note is, what they're going to attribute, just be ready for this, they're going to attribute higher gun crime as a result of this new law, because the gun crime in that area, the gun-related crime, will not go down. But now they'll be able to say, oh, since July 4th, whenever the law went into effect, look how many crimes we had with guns illegally, as they call it. So they're going to immediately attribute all the stuff that was happening prior to, now that's going to be because we have this new law in place, and now that's why criminals are carrying guns in this area. Now, I took a heat map, if you want to call it that, of the New Orleans area that has the high crime areas in them. And you will notice right here, the darker areas are your high crime areas, and of course the lighter areas, the lighter pinks and then white, that's the low crime to no crime areas. So I basically have circled, in general, the French Quarter right here as far as where this is. You'll notice it is pretty much the heartbeat of the high crime in New Orleans. It's right smack in the middle. It is the epicenter. The French Quarter is the epicenter of crime in New Orleans. Now, if I take the new little map that the city of New Orleans has put out, you notice where they have the 8th District Station right there. That's the little blue square. If you look around there, just like that video showed us with the kind of drone view, this is that 1,000-foot perimeter around this, quote, new school, right? So essentially it's 2,000 feet from end to end, if you want to look at it that way. But from the center, it's 1,000 feet out, a radius all the way around this station. So that right there is the new gun-free zone that no matter what, you are not carrying a firearm in there, right? So if I take their little map and I overlay it onto the high crime map, see that right there, you can see that I've taken the French Quarter map, put it in the French Quarter, and you can see their small little circle right there that's around that 8th precinct. So now I put my circle there and remove their map so that you can see. That is a gun-free zone right there where you see that red circle that I've drawn, right? That's the gun-free zone. That's 1,000 feet radius around the perimeter of the 8th Precinct Police Station. Again, right smack in the middle of some of the highest crime in New Orleans by far. Much higher than any of the national average and even higher than New Orleans in general. Now, I haven't even gotten into the whole discussion of can they even do this? No, they can't. Any of you attorneys out there watching this, you can thank me later. I've done the work for you. According to Louisiana.gov, the state's own website, if you go in there and look at what vocational schools require, the Board of Regents, for one, has to be involved. The Louisiana Board of Regents is the state's top higher education management board. It oversees policies and money for the state's universities, community colleges, and vocational technical schools. The institutions themselves are under the direct jurisdiction of one of 4 management boards that report to the regents. So you can't just all of a sudden call yourself a vocational school. You can't just say, you know what, today I'm going to make my place a school. You can't do that. There is a process. They're already marking these maps just like the one that you saw and putting this zone in place, printing the signs up that say it's a gun-free zone already. I guarantee you there's no accreditation whatsoever that's been assigned to this precinct to make it a vocational school. So it's not one. You don't just call it that and it becomes that. That's like me calling my school a police precinct. It doesn't just become that, right? That's not how it works. You don't just state that and it becomes what you state that it is. Kind of like assigning a gender or guessing a gender or something like that. No, there's rules involved. So you have to follow those rules. They always want to say, ignorance is no excuse for not knowing the law. Well, ignorance is no excuse for not knowing what constitutes a vocational school. Your 8th precinct is not a vocational school. You want to take it a step further? Is there anybody in this new 8th precinct vocational school, quote unquote, that has this application for the education department filled out? If you'll notice, this is a form from the Louisiana Department of Education, Career and Technical Trade and Industrial Education Teaching Certification Application. Notice the 3 bullet points. Applicant shall hold a high school diploma or have passed an equivalency test. Applicant shall have a minimum of 4 years full-time work experience of 7,680 hours of experience and aligned to the CIP area in the specific career technical field. The 3rd bullet, applicant holds current state or national license or IBC. I went through this entire application and I would be willing to bet that no one in this new quote school at this 8th precinct has filled this application out, not only filled it out, but gotten approval and meets the requirements that we talked about in the first page of the application. So by all definitions, the location cannot be a school and the people are not teachers in a legitimate school without the proper certification and of course experience in order to get that certification. So this is not a vocational school. On top of that, a city precinct, who pays for that? Taxpayers, right? Tax dollars do. Is this open to the public? Is this brand new school open to the public? Can I go take a class there? I'm not talking about making this a branch of the academy. By saying that they're going to teach one class there from the academy does not make this a vocational school. It makes this a training center for your academy. The academy is not a school. The Academy in New Orleans for New Police Officers is not a vocational school. So by simply saying that we carved one class out of it in order to make a vocational school, that logic doesn't work. You're not carving it from a vocational school. So it doesn't matter where you have this new class at. It wasn't a vocational school before, so it can't all of a sudden become one because you put one little class in there. And again, is it open to the public? Because public dollars are paying for this new, quote, school. So I should be able to take whatever class I want. I don't want to be a Metro PD. I don't want to be an NOPD officer. I don't have to be. You can go to a vocational school and take one class if you want to. So I want to know what that one class is that they're taking, and I want to know how I apply for it, because I genuinely will go there and take this class. You make it available to me and I will go take it. But you can't, because you're not a vocational school. You don't have vocational school teachers there that are overseen by the state, and this is all a ruse. And if you decide you want to make this a proprietary school, it still falls under all of the Board of Regents and the Louisiana Department of Education. It still falls under that if you want to call it private and say that it's not open to the public. But when you do that, you're using tax dollars. So it has to be open to the public. You can't make it private. And again, if it's open to the public and I can't go to it, that's a civil rights violation. I don't care what color, flavor I am, it doesn't matter. You're violating my civil rights if I cannot go to a public institution, which again, it has to be a public institution because you're using public monies to run it. So this entire thing will fall apart. It will not hold water. But these people in New Orleans think they're New York light. They think they're New York 2.0. So this will fail in the court system. They will lose this battle. They're going to have to go to a plan B. Hopefully they have one. They have a lot of dummies over there, so maybe a plan B is going to take them a little bit longer. So I figured I would use their own logic to apply it to my own home, right? I mean, they're the experts, right? They're the safety experts. They're the community experts. Let's ignore their record for a minute. But they're the experts, so they know what's best for all of us, right? That's why they're doing this. They're doing it in the name of safety. Maybe they know something I don't know. So I decided I would do the same thing and make my house a school as well. That would make my entire community safer, right?
So in the spirit of the geniuses in New Orleans who decided to make a place a vocational school in order to make the streets safer, I thought I would do the same thing at my house. I have now designated my home as a school so that the entire area is safer, because now the criminals won't carry guns here. Forgot they don't follow the law.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
He's over.